Yeah, it's been about a month since the Quiet on Set docuseries came out, and if you didn't watch it, it was basically about Nickelodeon having a toxic workplace and, unfortunately, putting up with or being complicit in child predators at the company for an extended period of time.
I was going to say, toxic is an understatement, isn't it?
Unfortunately, like, they mixed together complaints from adult coworkers with complaints from child actors, and it didn't quite make sense, but, you know, whatever sells your documentary. And after Quiet on Set came out, Dan Schneider did this really weird interview clearing up his side of the story. And it was totally scripted, at least that's the way it seemed to me. All of the questions had pre-scripted answers, and he was just trying to be like, good guy Dan Schneider, like, I never did anything wrong. I'm just, you know, learning and growing, and I realized that I used to be a jerk, and now I'm trying to be a nice guy. But there is, you know, kind of the elephant in the room of the Quiet on Set documentaries that Dan Schneider was never outright accused of any criminal behavior. Yep. He was literally just accused of being a jerk and quite obviously being porn addicted and an extremely mentally depraved sexual pervert. He did not victimize any of the child actors. He did not physically harm anyone. And at least not according to the documentary. And now he is suing the producers of Quiet on Set for defamation. And here is what his lawsuit states. Quiet on Set's portrayal of Dan Schneider is a hit job. While it's indisputable that two bona fide child sexual abusers worked on Nickelodeon shows, it is likewise indisputable that Dan Schneider had no knowledge of their abuse, was not complicit in the abuse, condemned the abuse once it was discovered, and critically was not a child sexual abuser himself. But for the sake of clickbait, ratings, and views, or put differently, money, defendants have destroyed Dan Schneider's reputation and legacy through the false statements and implications that Dan Schneider is exactly that. So they're calling it a hit job. Yeah. But the problem is, you know, if you actually watch through the documentary, there's no way you would walk away with the impression that he was an abuser or a predator, right?
Yeah.
Just with, you know, general suspicion of him. Because they show, like, photos and videos where, you know, he has this weirdly close physical relationship with Amanda Bynes when she was younger.
And that's what they did. They drew attention to those things while hoping that you'll draw the implication there of what they're saying happened.
And can you be sued for defamation by implication?
I don't know. I mean, if anything, like what I thought was interesting is after doing that in the earlier episodes, then they do the Drake Bell episode where he says that he called Dan Schneider as soon as all this was done, and that was the person who helped him. He was the most supportive person. Yeah, Drake Bell had nothing negative to say about Dan Schneider in that context.
Right, but then there's like these videos of Dan Schneider having other employees and having Amanda Bynes give him like neck massages. Okay, 12-year-old Amanda Bynes, like, it's just not appropriate, obviously, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he is in the same league of evil as the convicted child predators that were shown in the documentary. And yeah, the rest of it was Dan Schneider is kind of a psycho jerk, which was true.
It's not about what we believe to be true, it's about what can be proven, and they can't prove it.
They showed a bunch of examples, like a non-exhaustive list of examples from his shows where kids were put into inappropriate sexual innuendo jokes. Yeah. Like there was a scene of Miranda Cosgrove where she is like kneeling down on the ground and there is water shooting into her mouth.
Yeah.
From like disembodied off camera. And there are plenty of examples like that where, yeah, you're a pervert if you write jokes like this for children who don't even know the context of what the joke means. Yeah. But I guess at the time, no one thought that was a bad idea. No one told him that that wasn't a good idea to put through on a kid's show.
Yeah, like where were standards and practices to be like, no, Dan, you can't do that.
Like generally the sentiment was nobody felt that they could tell Dan Schneider no. in any context.
The other thing that the documentary draws attention to is like him and Amanda Bynes would disappear behind closed doors for hours at a time. And then they would come back later. And that's designed as an implication that something happened behind those closed doors. But they never explicitly say that.
Right.
So we don't, I don't know if this falls under the title of defamation, but it definitely is the type of thing where we understand what their implication is there, even if they can't prove it.
Right, but it's like, regardless of whether anything happened behind those closed doors, you shouldn't have been hanging out alone with a child while their parents are supposed to be there to supervise, legally speaking.
And they talk about that a lot, and they talk about the circumventing of getting around the parents. Because my biggest takeaway through most of this was like, it wasn't about Dan Schneider, it was about the amount of people that failed Drake Bell. Like everything that happened to Drake Bell after his dad worked so hard to prevent him from anything bad happening to him. He literally had to go out of his way to prevent him from being abused. And then when his mom gets involved and he's no longer under the care of his father, he's left to the wolves.
Dan Schneider gave a separate statement along with his lawsuit saying, "The Quiet on Set docuseries highlighted mistakes and poor judgment I exhibited during my time at Nickelodeon, most of which happened decades ago during my early career as a producer. There is no doubt that I was sometimes a bad leader. I'm sincerely apologetic and regretful for that behavior, and I'll continue to take accountability for it. However, after seeing Quiet on Set and its trailer and the reactions to them, I sadly have no choice but to take legal action against the people behind it. In their successful attempt to mislead viewers and increase ratings, they went beyond reporting the truth and falsely implied that I was involved in or facilitated horrific crimes for which actual child predators have been prosecuted and convicted. I have no objection to anyone highlighting my failures as a boss, but it's wrong to mislead millions of people to the false conclusion that I was in any way involved in heinous acts like those committed by child predators. I owe it to myself, my family, and many wonderful people involved in making these shows to set the record straight."
Yeah. And Amanda Bynes has made no allegations.
She declined to do an
comment
interview
or talk about this, and that's where the majority of the time when talking about Dan Schneider was talking about his relationship with Amanda Bynes.
And it's like, you don't really need to dramatize anything about what Dan Schneider did, because the rest of the real confirmed stories included in the documentary were enough to make it shocking and horrifying. Like, you didn't need to imply anything.
I remember the first time that it was Sarah who showed me this, like the Ariana Grande stuff. I was shocked.
Right. And that was like
disturbing.
Later into his tenure at Nickelodeon. That was in like the early 2010s, I think, is when that show ended.
Yeah. Did they ever, there was like that added episode. I didn't watch the added episode that wasn't initially planned. Did they ever talk about like the Jamie Lynn Spears rumors?
Oh, yeah. I saw like a post just today that was, it was like, Dan Schneider is suing the producers of Quiet on Set. There are currently resurfaced rumors about him impregnating Jamie Lynn Spears when she was 14 on the set of Zoe 101. And that's what everyone has been saying for years and years and years. But like, there's no proof.
Yeah.
There's no proof, and they didn't even mention that in the documentary, and I didn't watch the bonus episode.
Yeah.
Because that must have been just about like reactions to the documentary instead of more stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people have come up with that conspiracy theory over the years.
And a lot of people drew attention to the fact that the first episode had nothing to do with Amanda Bynes. It was all about these writers that he mistreated, that he heavily mistreated and was sexist against, the two female writers.
Which, like, I respectfully, I don't care.
Yeah, like
we don't care.
Well, when we were talking about that, I'm like, so did they not have any of those sexist idea? Like, were any of those gross jokes the product of those writers? If so, that's interesting. Like,
right? Yeah, like you were there in the writers' room.
Yeah.
When they were writing sexual jokes for children.
Yep.
So. Yeah, I really don't care about
any of their
complaints.
If you feel like you can't speak up, even though they're trying to like screw with your salary, you're not going to speak up because you morally take issue with some of the content. Mm-hmm. So
I just think it's interesting how Dan Schneider kind of did a complete 180, because after the documentary came out, he was acting like he was so apologetic and he like thinks it's so important that they made this and blah, blah, blah. And now that the lawsuit's here, he's like, actually, they defamed me. Like,
and he did the interview with like a guy with
one of the people he worked with, like, but it wasn't a child actor on one of his shows.
Adult.
It was an adult actor on one of his shows.
It was an adult.
And then, of course, the adult actor in that video goes, I always felt completely safe and confident and self-assured on all of your set.
Male.
Yeah, because you were already an adult man working for Dan Schneider, so you were able to advocate for yourself.
I mean, these types of documentaries are designed to garner these types of headlines. And I imagine that for Discovery, they bake these types of lawsuits into their budget during the year, that they know that some of these are going to draw lawsuits, because to get salacious and to find the line of what you can talk about and where you can go without, defaming someone, it's their job to find that line for the sake of, I really do see this as like, it's the worst type of like activism for profit. Mm-hmm. Like it really is. It's designed as a social justice cause, but it's from a for-profit company that's doing so. It's entertainment. It's not actually supposed to reveal anything.
Victimtainment.
Yeah, it really is that, which is disturbing.
But if the actual victims are complicit in it and like want to have a platform like that, even though it's a for-profit product, I guess that's the way it's going to continue going.
In the chat, P-Tran says the tone of the show took a sharp downturn when Brett became brunette. Well, the subject matter did that, my friend, not my hair.
I feel like if you kept the costume on while we're talking about child predators, it might be a little bit disjointed.
Yeah. Like
again, I say we have tonal issues here.
It's the type of thing where it's like, look, I don't ever look back at the footage, but I'll be like looking at like a segment years later and be like, why was I wearing that during that segment? That's disturbing.
Yeah.
And Nickelodeon's got they've got the Fairly Odd Parents reboot coming out now.
They race swapped and gender swapped Timmy Turner.
Yep.
It's absolutely abhorrent.
Do you think he wins this lawsuit, or do you think they settle out of court?
Oh, I don't think that it's actually like gonna work out for him.
Yeah.
They didn't actually accuse him of anything.
He's just doing it because it postures and
right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gonna be fine in that industry anyway.
Yeah.
If anything, the idea that you're a predator in that industry will help you.
Remember, one of them got fired, went to jail, and then went to work for Disney right after.
Exactly.
So,
and it still happens.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.